In the last year, President Donald Trump has made ending the North Korean nuclear threat a national security priority.
I think it's important to recognize that the diplomatic and other efforts of the past 20 years to bring North Korea to a point of denuclearization have failed. So we have 20 years of failed approach. And that includes a period in which the United States provided $1.35 billion in assistance to North Korea as an encouragement to take a different pathway. That encouragement has been met with further development of nuclear capabilities, more missile launches, including those of the recent February 11th and March the 5th. In the face of this ever-escalating threat, it is clear that a different approach is required.
In April, on the same day President Trump dined with Chinese President Xi Jinping at his Florida Mar-a-Lago resort, he ordered a unilateral missile strike on Syria for allegedly using chemical weapons against civilians. Trump's demonstration of military forces, supporters said, sent a message to Xi that if China did not act to curtail North Korean provocations, the U.S. would. Vice President Mike Pence came to the region to reaffirm the U.S. commitment to its allies while downplaying threats made by Trump during the campaign to withdraw troops unless South Korea and Japan paid more defense-sharing costs. Trump found a strong supporter for his hardline North Korea policy in Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. However, South Korea, after the impeachment of conservative President Park Geun-hye, elected liberal Moon Jae-in, who supports strong deterrence but opposes the use of U.S. offensive military force on the Korean peninsula.
President Moon has been quite clear that he believes that war on the Korean peninsula should never be considered an option, unless the North Koreans started first, of course.
While U.S. proponents of military intervention argued in favor of preventive war to eliminate the North Korean nuclear threat, U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis cautioned that the casualties from such action would be tragic on an unbelievable scale. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson on several occasions moved to support unconditional talks with leaders in Pyongyang, but Trump repeatedly rebuked his top diplomat, adding to speculation that the president may soon replace him. Trump instead has used inflammatory rhetoric, warning North Korea would face fire and fury, and calling Kim Jong-un a rocket man on a suicide mission.
No one has shown more contempt for other nations and for the well-being of their own people than the depraved regime in North Korea. It is responsible for the starvation deaths of millions of North Koreans and for the imprisonment, torture, killing, and oppression of countless more. Now North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. It is an outrage that some nations would not only trade with such a regime, but would arm, supply, and financially support a country that imperils the world with nuclear conflict. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. That's what the United Nations is for. Let's see how they do. It is time for North Korea to realize that the denuclearization is its only acceptable future.
Pyongyang would back down from a threat to send an ICBM into waters near the U.S. Pacific territory of Guam, but launched 2 long-range missiles over Japan and in September conducted its 6th nuclear test.
North Korean provocations have grown somewhat numb to them here in the nation, but noticeable strides made in missile technology as more citizens down south worried. Pyongyang declared it completed its weapons development after their latest ICBM launch. For the second part of our year-end special, Oh Jung-hee has a wrap-up of the regime's nuclear missile upgrades through 2017.
This year, North Korea conducted 1 nuclear test and 15 missile tests, firing 20 missiles in total. That's fewer tests than last year, but this year's provocations were bolder and more daring in that the regime continuously tested upgraded missiles, which are now deemed to be capable of striking anywhere in the United States. Among the missiles Pyongyang fired in 2016, the ones with longest ranges were the intermediate-range Musudan ballistic missiles. These can fly up to 3,000 kilometers, putting the U.S. territory of Guam within reach. But these missiles weren't considered a big threat, as only 1 out of the 8 Musudan tests was successful. This year, the regime started firing missiles with longer ranges. Intermediate-range Hwasong-12 missiles fired in August and September passed over Japan. ICBM-level Hwasong-14 missiles in July, which were launched at a lofted angle, reached altitudes of 2,800 and 3,200 kilometers, and the latest Hwasong-15 reached an even higher altitude of over 4,400 kilometers. The higher the altitude, the longer the missile range. If fired at a normal trajectory, the Hwasong-15 is believed to be able to fly up to 13 or 14,000 kilometers.
The Hwasong-15 ICBM can carry a supersized nuclear warhead and strike the whole United States. It's the DPRK's most powerful ICBM and meets the DPRK's goal of completing the rocket weapons development.
But still unanswered are 2 questions. Has North Korea developed the technology to miniaturize a nuclear warhead, and can its missiles successfully re-enter the Earth's atmosphere? The ideal weight of a nuclear warhead designed for an ICBM is seen to be around the 500-kilogram range. But some experts say if the engine is strong enough, the warhead may not have to be made any lighter.
I've conducted a virtual simulation after the Hwasong-15 launch, and even if we assume the warhead's weight at 700 to 800 kilograms, it appears the missile can fly up to 10,000 to 12,000 kilometers. This would mean that the North has lightened its nuclear warhead to a sufficient level for itself.
Missile re-entry is another crucial part. When an ICBM re-enters the atmosphere, it has to protect the nuclear bomb inside from frictional heat of 7,000 to 8,000 degrees Celsius, as well as massive pressure and vibrations. Whether the North has achieved this technology is not clear, but pundits say Pyongyang was still aiming to test the technology through the latest Hwasong-15 launch.
The North decided not to fire its missile to fly over Japan, because if it does, then it can't check whether the missile successfully re-entered the atmosphere, as it doesn't have a satellite. But if the missile falls in the East Sea, then the regime can check the missile re-entry using radar.
Having declared the completion of its nuclear weapons program, will the reclusive regime continue with its provocations? Analysts say the North could possibly halt its provocations at least temporarily until after Pyeongchang Winter Olympics and turn toward a peaceful dialogue with the surrounding countries. But if that fails, the North could conduct further ICBM and even submarine-launched ballistic missile tests and a 7th nuclear test to develop an even lighter nuclear warhead.
What the North calls a completion is actually about 90% complete, not 100%. There's more stages Pyongyang has to go through to diversify its missiles and actually deploy them. The North could also go on to develop solid-fuel missiles and SLBMs.
Next week, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will make his New Year's speech, and there's a lot of interest on whether he'll use the speech to officially declare North Korea as a nuclear state and hint at the possibility of starting negotiations with the U.S.
At the United Nations, the U.S. and its allies convinced China and Russia to support stronger international sanctions that ban the North's lucrative coal and mineral exports and cut off 1/3 of its oil imports. In November, North Korea announced it had reached its goal of developing operational ICBM capability after conducting its most powerful missile test to date. Few expect any diplomatic breakthroughs anytime soon, but if North Korea agrees to participate in the upcoming Olympics in South Korea, there could be a pause in provocations.